Several 2020 Democratic presidential hopefuls are starting 2020 in Iowa as the first in the nation caucuses draw closer. Former Vice President Joe Biden, Senators Amy Klobuchar and Bernie Sanders, and businessman Tom Steyer all spent Thursday campaigning in the Hawkeye State. Biden, Sanders, and Klobuchar have already qualified for this month's debate in Des Moines. They'll be joined by Senator Elizabeth Warren and Peabody Judge. Let's bring in Kate Payne. She's the Eastern Iowa reporter for Iowa Public Radio and is the co-host of the Caucus Land Podcast. Kate, welcome. Thanks so much for being with us. There are just over 30 days until the Iowa caucuses. What are you watching for in the lead up to this?
So I'll really be looking for enthusiasm. Which candidate has the enthusiasm to bring out Iowans on caucus night? Folks should remember, candidates are asking Iowans to physically go to their caucus location on February 3rd. These events can last hours at a time. The weather can be horrible in Iowa in February. And so candidates really are asking a lot of Iowans to make that step, to get out and pledge their support. And that really can make a difference for who does well in the state on caucus night.
Well, you've also reported on the 99 satellite caucus locations approved by the Iowa Democratic Party. What is the goal of these locations and how do they work?
Yeah, so these satellite caucus locations are something that's a little different this year. In 2016, the Iowa Democratic Party did have 4 of these locations. It was more of a pilot project, but this is the first cycle when the party is really having these locations at this scale, 99. And so many of those will be inside the state of Iowa, but some will be outside of the state as well, and there will be 3 international locations. The main goal of these satellite caucuses is for providing a place for people who can't go to their regular precinct to have another option where maybe they can go and caucus. So in some instances, these are at hospitals, at nursing homes, at college campuses. So really trying to make another site available for people who, for whatever reason, can't make those 3 hours at their regular caucus location.
Well, Iowa Congresswoman Abby Finke endorsed former Vice President Joe Biden Thursday. What led her to back Biden, and how important is her endorsement?
So this was an interesting step from Representative Abby Finke. She's the first of Iowa's congressional delegation to weigh in 2020. She's also certainly a high-profile political individual in the state. She flipped a red district to blue in 2018. She was one of these key House districts, and she was one of the youngest women at the time, just a couple months older than Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And Representative Finke really carried that district with a message of the working class message, organized labor, focusing on health care, focusing on infrastructure, and that was successful for her. And so her endorsement really sort of echoes the importance of those messages in this district. It's a sign that she feels that those are the messages that could help carry the White House for Democrats.
Well, are there any other candidates who have the same amount of endorsements from notable Iowans that Biden has?
So a number of candidates have been racking up different endorsements of different kinds. Certainly, many state legislatures have endorsed people like Senator Amy Klobuchar of Minnesota, as well as Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey. With Senator Klobuchar, another endorsement that stands out is State Representative Andy McKean. And so he was actually the longest-serving Republican in the Iowa State House, but just this year changed his party registration to become a Democrat. And he did that in part because of President Trump. He felt that he couldn't support President Trump. And so Representative Andy McKean certainly presents himself as someone who could represent those Republicans that might be winnable. And Senator Amy Klobuchar certainly prides herself on winning that individual over.
Well, how do voters in Iowa view these types of local endorsements?
So I think it depends. In the state of Iowa, again, with the caucus system, so much depends on getting Iowans out to their caucus precinct on caucus night. And so endorsements can come from state representatives, but also from community leaders, from community activists. And so in some cases, the weight of an endorsement in Iowa depends more on whether that individual can go out, knock doors, and convince Iowans to go out on caucus night, as opposed to sort of the high-profile nature of their title. So in some cases, a state representative may not be able to get out as many Iowans as maybe a community organizer.
And I know recently on your podcast, you had a chance to interview Peabody Judge, and he had an interesting sort of reaction to one of your questions when it came to the question of experience, which is something that has in fact been raised, specifically the notion of his lack of experience on a national and even statewide stage. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we wanted to ask former Mayor Peabody Judge about that because in his run for mayor, the most votes that he had ever won was in the ballpark of 10,000 votes total. This is something that some of his critics and some of his competitors do point out, his lack of experience at the state level, at the federal level. And it's that question of, if someone hasn't been able to win over a statewide office, do they really have what it takes to take back the White House? It's a standing question, certainly for many Iowans. But again, we should say at this point in time, Mayor Peabody Judge is leading in the polls in the state. Polls are a snapshot in time. They can change on a dime in Iowa, but that is where the numbers are right now.
Well, finally, the deadline to qualify for the January 14th debate in Des Moines is next Friday. 5 candidates are currently qualified. How detrimental is it to a campaign to not make that stage?
So I think the pressure is certainly on people like Senator Cory Booker, who has invested heavily in the state of Iowa. He's someone who built out his team early on, bringing in some sought-after staffers in the state. And he's missed out on previous debate stages, and it would be very difficult for him it's a huge opportunity to be missed, certainly, if he can't find himself on that debate stage. Certainly a lot of Iowans are wondering, there's a lot of enthusiasm for Booker that doesn't seem to be showing up in the polls. It's a question for many here of, will Booker be able to break through? When will that happen? And will it happen soon enough?
All right, Kate Payne in Iowa. Kate, thank you very much.
Thank you.